What is it?
Fuck off, just hit live. Oh,
I did.
Hello and welcome to Gooners in the USA. You're a dick.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. Look, how's the frog in your throat? I mean, from the other night. I mean, I'm not starting off the show insulting Arsene Wenger. This is going to be more of a tribute. So I'm talking about
in my throat. Oh, I shared with you off air how I felt about all that.
Well, this will be our last episode of Gooners in the USA. By the way, I'm going to start calling you by your new name, which is Manny. Hi, Manny.
Oh my God! What the fuck? I don't.
That's what you get for putting up some distant picture of you instead of the face that we all see and love
now. Speaking of new names, I think I'm going to start referring to our listeners. I'm going to refer to them as lovers
instead of users.
But it's going to be lovers with a Z.
See, this is Manny right here from Modern
Why did my
Family.
camera turn it off? Oh, you turned it off.
Yeah, I turned it off, and now this is the beautiful Andy Rhodes. So it's a major day, man.
Drinking from the cup of success.
Cup of success. I've given a lot of thought, and with Arsene leaving, I don't know that I could support this club anymore. I just can't. So I'm here to announce that I'm moving over to the Dortmund in the USA podcast next Monday. We've got our future co-host on the line with us here. It's just
you cannot wear that the whole show.
No, I'm not. There you go. What other podcast do you get disrobing in? I mean, I don't think there's too many other podcasts.
The reason Drew isn't on camera right now is because he's fully naked.
That's correct.
You told us that's the case. Drew, welcome back to the pod. It's the man, the myth, the legend, the webcamless Dirk Commissar, Drew Thompson.
And
thanks for coming on with like an hour's notice.
Yeah, that's all right. Thanks for having me. You only interrupted laundry, so it's not that big of a deal. But it's a laundry room of 4 machines with 70 apartments in the building. So if you don't get your machine now, you're kind of shit out of luck. So that's why I was like, "Can you wait an hour?"
Like, yeah, we can wait many hours. Alice Clark, Dirk Commissar, what's going on?
Not much. I'm glad the weather is not oppressive anymore. Last week it was like 92 and humid, and it was terrible. So
for
nice big puddle of chocolate.
Listeners, that's what, like
high, very high,
34 maybe. I don't know.
I don't know. But it was good. Pleased with the win today. I know we'll get onto that a little bit of that, obviously, but no, doing all right, not bad.
We won.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah, let's get right into it because today was kind of an historic day.
Oh, Andy's gone me.
He's done a you.
And wait, what did I do?
You went black.
Just start over. This is the professionalism that we're talking about here.
Can you not hear me?
No, you're fine. Go ahead.
Oh, no, when I was starting to write up the notes, I kind of started jotting down, and the first couple bullet points were Arsene. And then I started writing about the game and the goals, and then it kept thinking Arsene. I thought, we're not going to break down the 5 goals. We played well today. Burnley, as Canton said, rolled over for us. But his last game managing Arsenal at the Emirates, Mike, and I say that he's the last game managing Arsenal at the Emirates.
Yeah.
The match starts off with a guard of honor. I thought it was the least we could do as a club, and I thought it was a really touching moment. I wish we could have gotten more legends to walk him out as well, but absolutely great to see that as
like
his
holding
goodbye.
Hands, like in one big clusterfuck of love.
Yeah, but it was great to see the stadium in unison. It was just great to see.
Yeah, I mean, you said it was the least we could do. I mean, I disagree. The least we could have done is put like Max Allegri posters all over the place, and not made 75,000 T-shirts. But for Arsene Wenger, you want to do more than the least that you can do, and I think that starting off with the guard of honor was,
question
was a positive note.
Was the attendance record based off how many T-shirts they made, or seats, or butts in seats?
Drew, can they make T-shirts of people so that, like, if we have another situation like we had, in some of the most recent games before the announcement, that
I'm sure they actually can. You just have those fake jerseys that look like tuxedos.
You can invest in real dolls. And you make it look like you sold out the stadium, and B, everyone has a really good time.
That's just for Lee, especially. I'm sure he'll enjoy that as well.
For who?
Lee.
Yeah, he's been with a real dollar too. We've heard. I think it was a touch of class. It looked like a nice environment to be in, and a ton of Arsenal America people were over there today. I know most of them, and it was kind of random. They went over for the last home game, and then ended up turning out to be this. And I was jealous, a little jelly.
Yeah, I mean, 22 years at the helm. I can't help feel nostalgic about him leaving. I think he's given the club so much, from Henri, Bergkamp, the Invincibles, all those years of Champions League while we were moving into that new stadium. Extremely attractive football. I think his tenure may have gone on a tad too long. I'm sad to see him go, but I'm also elated because we get to see a big change, and that's something that a lot of our fan base have never seen before. With the ownership of this board, Mike, for me, I think he was the right person to be in that seat because he did it with dignity. He did it with class. I think for many seasons, he wasn't given the financial backing that he was either promised or the supporters were led to believe we had. And I don't know if another manager could have given us the Champions League football that we had without him being the manager. I don't know if someone else could have done it. But with that being said, tactically, he didn't change over the years. And ultimately, I feel like that's what really shot him in the foot. But it's a bittersweet moment. And I think we're going to say that a couple times on the pod today. But any last words from you? And then you can kind of hand over to Drew.
Yeah. Well, back in 1989, I'm kidding.
I wrote.
He writes on our fucking outline.
I wrote in the notes outline, Drew. I wrote, Mike, insert your 35-minute story and then how it somehow ends up with you being in England in 1989.
No, seriously though. I mean, he does have a week left, by the way. There's 2 more games, but his time at the Emirates is done. It's crazy. I mean, it's hard to think about that, but it's gonna be weird for a while. And I've seen a ton of people posting nostalgic, poetic, heartfelt tributes on social media, and I haven't really done that because I don't really have a ton to say, even though, Andy thinks I'm going to speak for an hour and a half. But I will say, the man's done a ton for our club. I mean, he's done amazing things for our club, unlike others who kind of point to his salary as being his rationale and the quid pro quo for that, or they call him a fraud or selfish. I mean, I don't buy into that. I believe that he lives and he bleeds Arsenal, that he really doesn't have anything else in his life, which is kind of sad. I don't think his stubbornness or whatever you want to say is purely responsible for our gradual decline in the last few years, at least in the Premier League, which is how I measure the direction of the team. I mean, FA Cup's great, but they don't really tell you how strong you are, or whether you're losing pace relative to other teams or not. I don't think it was like this maniacal, selfish power play or selfish pursuit. I just don't think that he really knew anything other of how to do it. And his infatuation and his love for football and for Arsenal, I believe, is unquestioned. And he served the club fantastically for a lot of years, but it's ultimately that infatuation and lack of ability to disconnect that led us into a situation where the ending wasn't going to be perfect. I really, really wish it had been a few years ago. I think, holding up the trophy after beating Hull in the FA Cup, I think most of you and I have agreed on a number of occasions. I think that would have been the perfect end for him.
Like I said, and we can hand over to Drew. I think a lot of what he did tactically, not changing, he was just so stubborn and set in his ways. And I always think, and I agree with you, Mike, I think in his heart, he really felt like I could do it this year. I can do it this year. And he just never could. The game just passed him by. And
I won't be cynical. I won't be cynical to look at it as him as having nefarious reasons for it or selfish reasons. I just think he just really thought he could do it, like you said, and failed to recognize until everybody else around him did, almost everybody else around him did, that it wasn't his deal anymore. So, Drew, I mean, what are your thoughts on this topic?
I think it's I I think his career is incredibly interesting, at least in terms of Arsenal. When you look at it, everyone always talks about how it's a tale of two Arsenals and a tale of two Arsenals. Like the first half of his Arsenal's career was fantastic, and the changes he brought in, we don't have to go into them. Everyone always talks about the diet and his tapping into foreign talent pools and the tactics and whatnot. But I think it's the second half that more people are going to start talking about as time moves past Arsene, to really look at where the club is currently, where the club can go. And I think that's going to be the topic of discussion for the next couple of years, because especially if the next manager comes in and we don't kick on like as we hope we will, a lot of people might look back and say, what was this Arsene's doing or not? Did he really set us back more than we actually once thought? Or if we do kick on and we do become this world footballing powerhouse that, if you look at our infrastructure, we have the capability of being, we'll then look back and say, maybe Arsene did do such a great job, because if without that grounding that he established, we couldn't kick on. So
that's why I don't think the fan base will ever come back together, because they'll no matter what happens, they'll be constant.
I think it's a fair point. I think and I know you brought that up in the WhatsApp group a couple of times. I think it's a really fair shout, because again, I just think his tenure became so divisive. And obviously, that's not what he wanted at all, because I think we can all agree that times did get quote unquote a little bit rough. There are other clubs who have it far worse than we ever had, and obviously you do have to come to terms with that. But in terms of where we feel like we should be, we weren't. And I think having faith in the manager was one thing, and I think the faith that he had in himself, I think, is commendable. A lot of people in his position would give up and say, I can't do this anymore, that give up years ago. And who knows what would have happened with us if he didn't remain 5, 6, 7 years ago, if he just decided to leave and he was past it, or find another managerial position like he likes to talk about. So no, I think you do have to give credit where it's due. The great things he did do for the club. I like you guys, I do think he maybe stayed 2, 3, or 4 years longer than he should have. But I think not enough credit is given for the job he did do, given the constraints we had to work with when we moved to the Emirates. And I do agree with Andy that I think another manager in that position wouldn't have gotten us top 4 for however many running years he did. I think it's far more impressive than people give credit to, and I do think that is quite commendable.
And cycling through managers who weren't committed to the club, like Arsene was during that time of fiscal, what's the word? But austerity, is that the right word? It could have gotten very, very ugly. So, I mean, at least, just like I think, it may get ugly from here if things aren't handled the right way and if things don't go as planned. I have no doubt that they would have continued to get that bad, even if we had kept Arsene Wenger at this point. But what we will never know, and I think we have to basically assume it would have been worse than it was, is if he hadn't stayed through that time.
No, and
trophies or no trophies.
And I agree with that. And I think you just brought it up, and I think that's the question that everyone wants to have answered now is, where are we going from here? And everyone's talking about it, but I really think that we can't press upon people enough the fact of how important this decision is and who's replacing Arsene Wenger. If we get it wrong, we could seriously regress, and we're in a time now, given the players we have who are in their prime, the players we have coming through, the players we have behind them, the infrastructure, everything is set up for us to really genuinely kick on. But if the wrong man comes in with the wrong philosophy and the wrong footballing approach, and if it's just not the right managerial fit, all of that can really be thrown by the wayside. And then players like Aubameyang and Ozil and Mkhitaryan and all those, and Lacazette, they could really be wasted, and who knows what will happen with the youth setup as well, and the young players behind that, Maitland-Niles and the like. So it's just
it's all there for the taking.
Yeah,
no,
it is.
And I think Drew said it yesterday in a text he sent us, that you can't judge players in this team right now because we know how mismanaged they've been and how they haven't been coached. And I completely agree. The right manager's got to come in and grab the bull by the horns here, but it has to be the right philosophy. And I think there's only a handful of managers that can create and take what Arsene has put in and instilled and carry that on. A Jose Mourinho could never walk in after an Arsene Wenger. It just wouldn't work. So you need to bring in someone that trusts youth, can play the type of football we play, because we do buy the right players to play this system, and kind of take it and hit the ground running. What I want to ask you guys is, if the new manager comes in and wins 3 FA Cups and only FA Cups in his first 4 seasons, do we as a fan base see that as shitty, or I don't know if that's the right word, so maybe
shitty's always the right word.
Or is that not going to be is that too underwhelming for us? So, or is that for the new manager is a good goal? I don't know, Mike. What do you think?
I don't think you should ever set goals by FA Cups. I mean, like I just said, I love the FA Cup. I love deep runs in cups. You know that we established that very early on in this podcast, and I want to win it every season. But it's not a true indicator of the quality of the club. So, it's a bonus. It's a one-off. I mean, it's not a one-off, but it's something that can be won when you're very poor. It can be lost when you're very good. And so I don't really, the new guy's not going to come in and win 3 FA Cups in 4 years. It's not going to happen. But if we're using our measuring stick for whether we're headed in the right direction, it's just fucking silly. Andy, stop being silly. Okay, this is silliness. Drew, what do you?
I think
FA Cup.
I think it would also. Obviously, FA Cups are always nice. It is an incredibly difficult competition to win. But I think if we were in Arsenal, say if we were Southampton, then obviously we would take it. But because we are a financial powerhouse and we do have quite a bit of history domestically, and given the players we do have, you have to say if we're winning FA Cups and finishing 8th, no one's going to be happy. If we're winning FA Cups and finishing 3rd or 4th or 5th, then you could say, sure, I think that's a decent start for a new manager coming in, given the magnitude of the person who came before him. I think that's a better measuring stick. I think here on out, we do have to be realistic. I do feel that the bare minimum is to at least get Europe in the coming 2-3 seasons. Even if it's not Champions League, even if we're just in Europa League, it's still finishing top 5 or top 6. I think that should be the bare minimum, but naturally a club of our stature needs to be getting Champions League at some point. But you do have to have some sort of stability and groundwork being built under the new man moving forward. It's going to be incredibly difficult for us to just go back into the dogfight with United, City, Chelsea, Liverpool, even Spurs now, and say we're guaranteed to get top 4 just because a new man's coming in. It's not that easy. I think we've all talked about that before. But if we finish next season, if we finish 5th and get the FA Cup as a win, I would take it for a season under a new man after Wenger's tenure. You'd have to say that's a win.
Well, you almost have to. I mean, other than finishing out of Europe altogether, you almost have to take any result next year and pay less attention to the outcome and the result as to what is actually happening at the club, what players have been brought in, whether you've seen improvement out of the players who seem to have regressed since we bought them, the Mustafis of the world. I hate that fucking of the world expression, but there's only one Mustafi in the world, at least. So, that I think is more important. And it's going to be hard. It's going to be awfully hard for Arsenal supporters, people who've been impatient, notoriously, myself included at times, to give a year without forming a very strong opinion and reaction about, whether the right decision was made or the wrong decision was made. But it's vital that we do
but
that.
I think the name of the person that comes in gives time, right? So for example, if you bring in Max Allegri, say we start the season and we're 2 losses on the trot or 3 losses from 7 matches, I think the majority
we're going to find out who the big cunts are.
Yeah, but I think the majority of our fan base look at that and go, okay, it's Max Allegri. He's got a history. He's got to have time. If it's a Brendan Rodgers, we're just burning the Emirates down. I mean, let's be honest, right? So it depends on who we're bringing in. If it's a Patrick Vieira, I think people are starting to get pissed, but he gets the ability and he probably gets the time and the sake of a couple months. But if it isn't Allegri, I think he gets enough time where we don't turn on him. But God damn it, the pitchforks are coming out of it. Someone bullshit appointment.
I could totally see that Brendan Rodgers thing happening. Man. He could get fired after 2 games.
So
he could get fired in the Priest after the Emirates Cup.
Seriously. We'll jump into the match just quickly. I mean, the Clarets, they have a wonderful story of their own this season. I don't think if anyone would have guessed how high they would have finished. But they were just outclassed on the day. And as I said, to echo Tom, they rolled over for the Arsenal. You could tell that they were already, as the expression goes over here, on the beach. So with 5-0
Like
winners.
over here, do you mean in your living room in Denver? Or?
Yeah. Arsene gets his 475th win in 826 Premier League games. Emirates was draped with tributes. He had that giant Merci Arsene banner outside the ground, 60,000 red T-shirts bearing the name, the slogan, the date. It was a nice touch, and I think it was an appropriate touch. And I'm glad, in a sense, Mike, that he at least got to do the walkout at the Emirates. You know, holding the FA Cup high would have been awesome, but this was a great touch for us. And again, bittersweet, but I don't know any other way you could have sent him off.
Yeah, I mean, if he had walked off after the FA Cup victory, I suppose they could have had a special ceremony at the Emirates that probably would have filled it.
They probably would have, yeah.
Free walk in, take a seat, and say goodbye type of thing. That, I mean, if they can fill the Bernabeu when they sign Gareth Bale and everyone's watching him do a little keepy uppy for a few minutes, I think they
were handing out bread to all the Spanish people back in the day where they'd throw bread out. So
they were handing out batons so that they could hit people with them. But the whole shirt on the seat thing, it's funny how much publicity and how much chatter there was about that. It's pretty popular over here in the States. I mean, you go to any NBA playoff game.
I was about to say, I was just watching that Utah Jazz game, and it was like blanked out yellow in there from everyone getting the shirt.
Yeah, I mean, they put some color of, it's either one color or it's different colors in different seats so that it looks like a flag or something like that. And for me, like when I go to those games, it's like, fucking thanks, you dicks. Because, I mean, I know you're trying to make the crowd look cool and but do you realize I weigh 800 pounds and that there's no fucking size of a shirt that you can have at those games that's going to fit me? So, I mean, the whole game it's going to be less about the game and more people just staring at my tits and asking me what I'm due. So, thanks, you fucks, for the shirts. But, they look like nice shirts. And as long as we didn't have to see Andy Gixer wearing one, then my day was made. But Drew, did Tom pick up a shirt for you, or is he selfish AF?
I didn't ask. It's just, whatever. I have enough shirts to deal with. I can't deal with it anymore.
I have enough shirts to deal with. That should be the title of this podcast. I have enough shirts to deal with. All right, so let's for a second, and maybe this is somewhat Arsene related, but for a second, let's take the focus off of him and turn it on to another member of this team who's a bit controversial at this point. Mesut Ozil.
No.
Drew, you come and get it, baby. Because look, tell me what we're supposed to do here. Because I know you and I just in the last few days have been in lockstep with each other on a number of topics. Actually, I'm starting to feel very, very close to you. But on the pitch, Ozil and all the team that we have and the management that we've had and the change, we pretty much agree that we like him here and we want him here, I think. But the off the pitch stuff, the will he or won't he, the is he or isn't he, I mean, personally, you just know he's going to play every minute of every game in the World Cup this summer. He'll be fine for that somehow. But what is the deal with him? What's going on?
Well, first, this notion that some fans have that Ozil walks into Wenger's office and is like, "Fuck you, I'm not starting tomorrow. I'm going to go on vacation." That's not how that works.
Going on vacation.
So I'm off to Istanbul. Like, that's not how it operates. Wenger's one that picked.
Is that your impression of him?
I don't know how to speak. I don't have to speak, with a Muslim accent, but
Muslim accent,
Arabic accent rather. No, I just feel like Wenger's one that picks the team. He's the one that tells players, if you're training or taking a rest, and if there's nothing to suggest that he's being dishonest about Ozil's recurring back issue. And if that is actually a problem, then for a fact that Jurgen Low has fielded a phone call saying, I need him to rest as much if you can afford it, because I need him for the World Cup. He's still crucial for Germany in tournaments and in qualifying. So, and according to Wenger, in this post-match with the Atletico match, he felt that Ozil gave 100%, that he worked hard, even though we couldn't find a goal. He credited his performance. So perhaps he was having a little bit of a knock afterwards. I mean, obviously we don't know, but we have to take it for face value of what we're being told. So
is it
fans,
a back injury? Is he sick?
He was saying Wenger said it was his back. So
I know he said that today, but then every other time it's sick.
Hey, that's the thing. I don't know, but for all we know, there's something in Ozil's contract, maybe perhaps that where it says he has to rest a certain amount of matches a season, or maybe he just did sign with a new deal, so maybe in the contract it says by a certain point in the season, if we're out of all the competitions, I want to rest because I have the World Cup coming up. We don't know that because none of us are sitting in on contract negotiations. We're not at London Colon to have the discussion with him.
God, if he got that in his contract and 350,000, were they asking for 400 and we said no, we'll give you 350 and 49 days off?
Right. I mean, obviously we don't know, but I mean, I think today was an important match considering how high Burnley was placed, and we did want to get top 6. So I would have preferred he played today. But on the flip side, if Wenger sees fit to rest him, then he rested him. Obviously, we didn't need him. We just won 5-0 at home.
Yeah, and the comment was that we probably won't see him again, for the rest of the season, which really is just.
But why should we?
Days. Well. Because he's being paid $350,000 a week.
Fair, but the season's foregone conclusion. Now, with this win, we can't finish higher than 6th or lower than 6th. So why play him? And this isn't the first time that a big player has been rested later on in the season with a tournament coming up in the summer. We see that all the time. So I think the fans just sort of cling to any excuse to get on Ozil because, to be fair, he is such a good footballer, but we have not seen the best of him at any point in his Arsenal tenure. Even the season where he came close to breaking the assist record, he still had another gear he could have kicked onto, and we haven't seen it yet. So I get the frustration behind the fact that you bring him in for this amount of money and when this reputation of being the world's best number 10, and we still haven't seen the best of him. But then on the flip side, you have to also ask yourself, is that his fault or is that the system's fault? And that's something we've already gone on to before, and we mentioned before, is that there's so many players here that we don't know how they're going to respond under a new manager, under a new system, with new expectations. Will they fit in? Will they not fit in? But all you have to say is if you look at...
They play more than half the games.
Right. If you look at Ozil's entirety of his career, dating back to when he came through at Schalke, he's carried every single team he's played for, but he comes here and now he struggles. Then you have to ask yourself, can he really not stand up to the Premier League, or was it the manager? So it's one of those two things, and we won't find that out until the new man comes in. But I do feel like he deserves, like everybody else in this team, does deserve to get that first year under the manager and see, does he kick on? Do we see a better player, or has it been him all along? And I'll gladly hold my hand up and say it was him all along if he fails to perform next season. But such is his quality that I think he'll be just fine. So
safe to say then that you don't agree with the Twitter comments of at Cal94Gooner, who in response to my tweet about Ozil said, he's a cunt, I don't want him at our club next season. Is it safe to say that you're not in agreement with him? I'm
not in agreement with that. I think it's absolutely. I mean, anyone is entitled to their opinion. Obviously.
I'm not in agreement with him either, but I am getting a little. I hit my absolute bottom with him on the pitch during the Bayern Munich game, one of them. And since then, he did a lot to prove me wrong, and I subscribe to your philosophy, as I do with many of our players about the coaching, but the off the pitch stuff, I'll give him a year, and if it's all, and he may, as I've said in previous podcasts, he may have some sort of autoimmune disorder, and if he does, I can certainly understand that. But this is all very weird.
Well, whoever the new manager comes in, a lot of these players are not going to be able to ride this easy wave that they're riding right now.
Well, we assume they're riding.
We assume they're riding, right? Yeah. But I think we can all agree that Arsene's probably a player's manager more than anything else, not the come in and kick the cooler at you and rip your fucking balls off for misplacing a touch. That being said, whoever the new manager who comes into this club is going to have one hell of a front line. As we're seeing Aubameyang and Lacazette connecting really well. If they both stay healthy, I can't see them not each scoring 45 goals minimum next season. Each. I can't wait, Mike. I can't wait.
That was a hell of a transition, by the way, for you there. A little behind the scenes stuff, but yeah, Arsene said he wanted to leave the team in good stead for the next manager, and whether you believe that Aubameyang was down to Arsene Wenger or whether that was more Mislintat, without Arsene Wenger signing on to it or being behind it, whether you believe that it was intention to leave right now or whether he was forced out. I think can look back and say he accomplished what he wanted to do there. He's left the team in, as far as the talent is concerned, look, we don't have the talent of Manchester City, Real Madrid, Bayern Munich, or Barcelona, but we have talent. We have very good players, and on our day, we can play with anybody. So, with PEA and Alexandre, their link up already is good. They're like shades of Ian Wright and Kevin Campbell version 2.0. And they have to be on the pitch at the same time. So now, Drew, issue number 2 for you, and this isn't a gotcha like were you wrong type of thing. I'm actually curious because 4 months ago when we were linked with him and ultimately signed him, you had some very strong opinions about how he would or wouldn't fit.
Thing, Mike. I wanted to see what Drew thought.
Well, then we're going to get our answer together. We can just be happy. Now we've gotten time to see how he slotted into the club. There's been interruptions with his inability, the bullshit thing with the Europa League. But we've played the 2 of them together. We've played one of them at a time. We've played games with neither of them. How are you seeing him slot into the team now? And is there a possibility that this is really going to work out?
I think the question was never his ability as a player. It was if we would do what it takes tactically and in our approach to get him serviced. A lot of people were talking about before with Lacazette that sometimes he was so left out to dry. When you look at a lot of the performances, it was him 1v3 against 3 defenders and he was just snuffed out and he couldn't really do much. You could say the same thing about Giroud a lot of the time. People would have those same complaints for the last couple of years, and I think the question was just, can we get him in the box with service? Because if you get him the ball, he's going to score goals. He's done that ever since he transitioned at Dortmund. And I think it's working out at the moment. Obviously, I don't see why it won't moving forward. But I think when you see him and Lacazette play together, they feed off each other so well because Lacazette, as you saw today, his movement off the ball is exquisite, and so is Aubameyang's. To be fair, obviously Aubameyang is the one that is going to play off his shoulder, but Lacazette did such a good job of dragging defenders to create space for Aubameyang to get one-on-one, so he can use his pace, his quick first step off the defender's shoulder, and then you saw the flash across goal. He would tap it in. He scored something like 139 of his 145 goals at Dortmund came from in the box. So it's always about just getting him service in the final third. If you get him free, he's going to put it away, and I think at times we've been good at that in the past, but at times we've also struggled to get service from wide. Bellerin always struggled with service from wide. Our wingers would never take it out wide and cross it. It always should have cut in, and then everything would just become compact, and we could never really operate that well. And I think we're seeing something different now because even with Mkhitaryan, you see him trying to drag defenders as well. Bellerin's been getting forward a little bit better, and he's obviously bringing more of a threat with his pace. So I think you've seen a little bit of a shift now. I think we've finally understood how to maybe get that movement in the final third going to where we can get both of them the ball, both Lacazette and Aubameyang. It's always nice to have one of them scoring, but if they're both scoring, it's going to be really hard for opposition defenders to mark them both out of the match without putting 2 on each, and then you have space for someone like an Aaron Ramsey late runner or Jack Wilshere, which you saw today. If one-on-one, he would beat his man because they were so worried about the forward players. So we have a lot of threats going forward. It's just now it's going to be a matter of getting that right manager to come in and understand that moving forward, we really need to use them both because that's the best forward pair in the league for me, I think, if you start them both at any given time. So
it's just a wealth of we have Lacazette, who's impressed me so much since he came back from injury. He just hit the ground running. Aubameyang, Mkhitaryan, Ozil 35% of the time. Ramsey, an informed Ramsey, sounds like something Tom Canton would pack on FIFA. But these are players who can be incredible. That's more firepower, arguably. Is this crazy to say that that's more like the 5 or 6 offensive players that are playing together that may be as talented as 5 or 6 at Man City? Am I absolutely crazy for saying that?
No, I don't think you're crazy saying that, Mike. But the City players,
I'm crazy for other things, everything else.
I think those City players are great, not only on paper but on pitch, but Pep has them playing in a very specific way, and I think each individual knows how they fit into a system moving forward. With us, I feel like there's more of a just go out, play, find the space, do your thing. to create the moments, the tiki-taka, the Arsene football that we've come to know. Whereas when you watch Jesus or Kevin De Bruyne, they know I got to do this thing. And if I'm here on the pitch, if the ball's over here, I need to be here. If the ball's here, I need to be here. You don't really see much of them just kind of roaming as you do with an Arsenal type of team. We have two of the best, my opinion, we have two of the best strikers in the world on our team now. And 18 months ago, we would never have thought that would happen. 12 months ago, we'd never thought that would have happened. So for us to have Lacazette and Aubameyang, you can have a manager figure out how to play those two week in and week out. 45 goals minimum.
Walcott, you think?
Yeah, a tad bit. But jokes aside, I mean, we're in a very good situation right now, and I'm in the same camp as Drew. I'm not going to judge Mustafi, Holding, Ozil, Mavropanos, Koscielny, Bellerin until I see a manager come in and have 6 months where he can really grind them and figure out, here's your weakness, here are your strengths, here's how we're going to play to those, and coach. And then we'll see where we're at. But I think by Christmas next year, we're going to have a completely different style of football. And I love one of Allegri's quotes where it's something like, if you want to see a show, go to the circus. We're here to win football matches. That's what I care about. I don't care about how beautiful our game is. Fucking win. That's all. I don't care.
How efficient it is. Doesn't
exactly.
matter what it looks like.
Yeah, exactly. I don't care if we win 3-0, 1-0 if it's ugly, if we park the bus. Just win. I want us to lift trophies. And we can do that with those two guys up front for us.
Absolutely. I mean, we can outscore teams, and God forbid our defense actually gets better. We can start winning games 5-0 all the time.
But you look at the goals we scored today. We score 5 goals. All of them are completely different. Great teamwork, great movement. You've got players that are making beautiful runs. You've got players making beautiful dummies.
No route one bullshit.
Exactly. I mean, Iwobi looked like a refreshed player today. For me, he was the man of the match.
Yeah, I think we got to point that out because we certainly pointed out when he wasn't.
When Welbeck came on, there was like a rejuvenation in his game, and I think we've seen that the last honestly, I've been really impressed with how Welbeck has been playing since Aubameyang has come. And I don't know if it's because a fire's been lit under his ass or if he's just healthy and he's finding good form, but he's not – he still misses a lot, right? Don't get me wrong. But there's just something about him. Maybe it's the World Cup year, but even today, he gets 20 minutes and he tries to make it count. We see him play well in Europa League, a little bit weaker on Thursday, but he was trying to make it happen, and that's all you can ask. But I just think there's something in this squad right now, and we've got the talent. We just now need that person to puzzle it all together, and I'm excited for it.
Yeah, I mean, there's every reason to be excited. Nervous, but excited, and that's, I mean, NBE. That's what I'm going to be for the next 6 months until we see this team, 2 months into the season and see how it's all panning out. But
yeah, so we didn't see any Arsenal fans leave their seats because there was the celebration at the final whistle. But
we know a few who said they were going to, though.
Yeah, we
did. They? Do we know whether they did or not? I've been offline most of the day.
It appears that most of the dissent came when Cheps Keswick walked out and people booed, and I get that, but I think
and Kroenke on the big screen too.
Yeah,
that was a big one.
But Arsene wasn't the only person that we were saying goodbye to today, and not maybe goodbye, but Vic Akers is leaving the club after his tenure. What he's done for that women's football program is huge. I think he put the women's football program on the map before it got the acclaim, and I know over here in the U.S. it's a little different because I think the women's football team is followed pretty heavily by most football fans over here, not just young women and girls, but I think the three of us probably watch the majority of their matches too. But he is, an absolute legend at the club. We're saying goodbye to Per, which I thought he got an absolutely great send-off today.
How great is it that he got some time on the pitch at the end of a comfortable win?
Celebration. I wish he would have got the goal at the end where he was up there trying to get that header, but, the fans really gave it to him. And I know he's staying with the club, but always great to see a captain get sent off that way. And then the women's ladies captain, Alex Scott, was also said goodbye to today. Mike, I'm not sure if you're that familiar with her, but huge presence for England. She does a lot of TV work over there. It's just another name, I think, for Arsenal. I mean, you got 4 legends of the club that are walking away, and it's there's a lot of change happening, man. There's a lot of change.
Yeah, I'm wearing shorts during the podcast in honor of Vic Akers, and also because I'm like in a climate-controlled building. But it was the least I could do. So, that's the one that's going to hurt. I mean, if we regress next season, I think we can point to the loss of Vic Akers as being the huge mistake. I mean, what's he doing? Is he just going into retirement? Is he?
I would assume he's old as fuck. I'm assuming he's going to retire.
I mean, I was a massive Akers knows best guy, and I'm absolutely gutted about this. But best of luck to him. I'm excited to see what Per can do, and Alex Scott. You're right. I mean, I'm not as in tune to Alex Scott's career and the magnitude of her importance to the club. I've certainly learned about it. I'm aware of it, but yeah, I mean. No transition is easy, and when Vic Akers decided to leave, I bet he's so pissed off at Wenger for stealing his thunder. I mean, wouldn't you be?
Oh, I mean, Drew, do you think that we're going to see a lot of backroom changes? And if we do, if the Bolds leave, do you think it's because he was asked to leave, or do you think it's because he has gotten an easy ride and times are changing? Like, what are your thoughts there?
Usually new managers will bring in their own staff, or at least a large portion of it, especially their own number 2. So I think he's done. Whether if he wants to go or not is another matter. But again, the thing is, no one still to this day knows exactly why Steve Bold was even there. Whether if it was true that he was, shackled by Wenger, or if he literally didn't do anything at all, if he was there just collecting a paycheck, we don't know that. But I'd be shocked if if a new man comes in and keeps them, especially if that new manager isn't British, which I expect it's not going to be. If Luis Enrique comes in, he's sure as fuck not going to keep Steve Bold. Nagelsmann, same thing. Allegri, same thing. They're going to want to bring in their own people.
Why would Steve Bold want to stay? I mean, at this point, he needs to as they say here in the States, he needs to shit or get off the pot.
Yeah.
The only reason I can see him staying is if we bring in a manager whose language is not English, or their first language isn't English. He knows a lot of the players. He's that good transition. He's able to help with the communication aspect. But, you could bring in an Arteta, a Vieira, an Henry, who could also help with that too, right? You've got Per that's there. So the only reason I see Bold staying is if he does roll up his sleeves and say, listen, I've been held back for the last God knows how many years I've been number 2. Let me get my hands dirty with these players, and I can help with the transition. But that's the only way I would see it, is if he is that bridge between the new manager. And I think the majority of the managers we're looking at, or at least have been shortlisted, can all speak English. So I don't think that would be the problem.
Well, I think that's
learning English.
Or learning. Yeah, I don't think the club's going to want to bring in a man and have to worry about translators or issues on the training ground with players not understanding. Having translators at the training ground as well, or having a player take time out to translate things. I think just
Thierry Henry, master translator for the team.
I think
that's what it says on the website. It says translator.
I think they just want to be as smooth as possible. And again, it's easy for a new manager to come in and really instill their philosophy when their number 2 does that same thing. Unless the new man comes in and wants to keep the status quo, which I doubt. So
I think Steve Bold should go for Vic Akers' job. It'd be perfect. He could stick around the guy. He could be around the fellas. He can, he could have his say on the kit. I mean,
so we see Arsene gets a moment to address the supporters. He's obviously on the pitch. There's a giant image of him floating behind him on a flag.
That was freaky.
He quietly speaks with genuine
emotion.
For
our podcast. I'm sorry to interrupt, but I want each of us to be, get rid of this fucking thing behind me and just put a huge image of me behind me.
So genuine emotion from him, where he says, "I will miss you." And I truly believed it, Mike. Just watching him speak, I truly believe that he is heartbroken that this time is up. And whether or not he was part of that decision or not, it can't be easy. Again, bittersweet. You see the lap of honor where he's saying goodbye. It's going to be strange next year.
Yeah, bittersweet AF. It's it would have been funny if he said, "I will miss some of you."
And here's a list of those who I won't.
Here's the list and Twitter handles of those who I will not miss going forward. It'd be funny if he actually starts like doing Twitter now that he's not the coach anymore. He just gives it back to everyone that's been giving it to him. Gets that blue tick next to his name and starts shutting people up. But no, he's too classy to do it in that setting. But yeah, I mean, I 100% believe that he will miss everything about what he's had for the last 22 years, to the point where I think he needs to get another job without taking that traditional year off or 2 years off to clear his head, because he's not going to know what to do with himself. I mean, I always know what to do with myself in private, but I don't think he's going to end up being able to know what to do. And so I worry for him a little bit, because I think he cares too much. He's gonna have to have a rebound club.
Well, I ask you both this in closing of the whole Arsene chatter. What's an appropriate long-term send-off for him? And I'll kind of go first to give both of you an opportunity to think. But, I don't think naming the entire stadium after him is appropriate. And I say that because there have been great managers before him. There will be great managers after him. And we're bigger than just one person. However, for me, maybe 5-10 years from now, a stand with his name on it and a statue out front is probably the minimum that I would give. I think he's totally worthy of that, regardless of what you think of him in the last 5 to 7 years. Andy's probably fucking screaming his ears off right now. "You useless cunt, I can't believe you're saying this shit." But
can you imagine when he has to sit in that stand and he's like,
and I hope it's the stand that your season tickets in. But that's, for me, I think the minimum for him. I think he deserves that for his tenure and what he's brought to the club. So I would give him a stand with his statue out front, and I think that's good.
You got to give it a few years, because if he's going to go all WWE heel on our ass and like take a job with Spurs or Chelsea, or like raid our players for PSG if he ends up in that job. Any short of that, we give him a stand. I mean, United gave Ferguson one pretty quickly. And by the way, hopefully Alex Ferguson will pull out of his situation.
What terrible news that was.
Yeah, I'm just weird timing, and hope he's okay. But yeah, once the transition settles down a little bit, we let the team go through whatever changes they are. People start not forgetting, but start detaching a little bit, if you will, from the whole Arsene Wenger era, and get our own identity. Then we give a nod to the past by giving him the well-deserved honor of naming either the East or the West stand after him. Yeah. And I think when they do that, I've said this last year when we had Tom and Craig Scott on the pod, there needs to be one Wenger stand and then one Wenger out stand, so that people, the people can get their frustrations out by standing in the Wenger out stand. But no, seriously though, a stand. I don't think you can rename the stadium, mostly because Emirates pays for that. So I think that's one obstacle that you would have for doing that. But no, a stand, a statue is obvious, and I think that's probably enough.
Ooh, the betting on Allegri's dropped to 3-1.
That's because the Plug came out with an interview today talking about it. The Plug moves markets.
Drew, what are your thoughts on the long-term send-off for Arsene?
I think a stand and a statue are about right. I think it takes a lot to name an entire ground after one person. If you think of Inter and AC Milan, with Giuseppe Meazza, I think it's a little bit different. A lot of Italian football experts consider him to be the best Italian player of all time. He's still, I think fourth all time in goal scorers in Serie A, second all time for the Italian national team in goals. Played for both clubs, managed both clubs, literally helped make Italian football what it is.
Is Santos' stadium like the Pele Stadium? if he doesn't have a stadium named after him, then no.
Not that I know of, honestly. I'm
not talking about Andre Santos either.
So I feel like in that circumstance that would make sense. But I think for Wenger, Arsenal's been around for so long before him, and again, he's arguably the club's greatest manager of all time. But if United only name Old Trafford if they have a stand for Sir Alex, I think they got it right. Because it's for clubs that storied and have been on for that long. It's hard to associate everything with just one person if that person hasn't been around since its inception, and didn't literally put it on the map. Arsenal was on the map long before Wenger came here. So I think a statue and a stand would be just about right. So
I think we should name a stand after Bruce Rioch, but it should be a concession stand. Bruce Rioch, and all the food is spoiled and complete shit.
Then we'll have one after George Graham, but it'll just be like banks where you can just go launder money.
It'll be George's Graham crackers. I can think of. I'm going to spend some time thinking about that. All the different concession stands that we can have. But no. One piece of non-Arsenal news. We can't let this opportunity go by without pointing out. Fuck off, Stoke. Fuck you.
Yeah.
Fuck you.
Yeah.
Good riddance.
Yeah. Knuckle dragging pieces of shit.
Yeah, seriously. And I mean, I got into some Twitter discussions with people like why, focus on your own club. Don't focus on others. I'm like, there's a little bit of history here. I'm not just laughing. I'm not laughing at West Brom for more than likely going down, although it hasn't happened yet. There's some history there, but I love how Twitter works because, I spend so much of my time, too much of my time on Twitter, trying to come up with smart ass stuff to say and get retweets and publicity for the show. Then I make and it doesn't work because I suck at it. Then I make some snarky, immature post laughing at Stoke with a picture of Ryan Shawcross being interviewed, starting with the word "suck it," and it's like 25 million retweets. So shows you the level that we're dealing with here. Is negativity works, and I was awfully negative about Stoke. Any last memories of Stoke, Drew, that you want to share?
No, I absolutely fucking hate them. They can go back to Mordor, so it's all right.
Seriously, they can't wait to see the Stoke Sunderland match in the Vanarama National League in 4 years or however. If they could get down there quicker, it would be even better.
That'd be fantastic.
Trade places with Sutton, who, by the way, just missed their opportunity to get promoted today into the Football League, but we'll keep an eye on them for next year. So anyway, that wraps up the day, and 1 week left in the season. 2 games for us, 1 for some other teams, and we'll obviously have a pod or 2 to finish off the season before we go on holiday. But we do have some user questions, some that we didn't get to on Friday because somebody on the podcast spoke for a very, very long time, and we ran out of time. From Sebi, master Photoshopper, unpaid intern, hilarious motherfucker. Did you cry like I did during the Guard of Honor and the Wenger speech after the match? My answer is no, because I'm a dick. Andy, did you cry? You seem a little nostalgic.
No, I'm nostalgic, but no, I didn't cry.
Nostalgic. I'm just not a pussy.
Yeah, no, you fucking pussy, Sebi. God, you gotta eat more meat, bro. No, like I said, I think for me it's bittersweet, but it's a long time coming, and I've been in the camp where I've wanted him gone for probably 7 seasons now. So it's the right time, but I'm glad he got the send off he got.
Yeah. Drew, did you cry?
No, I made.
You're crying right now. Is that why you don't have your webcam?
Yes. No, I made my peace with it. When he first announced it, so I had my moment of sentimentality there. I made an Instagram and Facebook post about it, and had some reflections over it. And I think that was it.
Did you cry when you got to the washing machine tonight and they were all taken?
I sure did, actually.
I don't remember whether we talked about that at the beginning of the pod or before the beginning of the pod. Either way, it probably wasn't funny. All right, so you're good. You don't need a tissue. You don't need some tissues to be.
No, no, just fine.
From Tokyo Gooner, who I'm sure followed Arsene Wenger's career at Grampus very closely before he came here. What will you miss the most about Wenger next season? For example, 70-minute substitutions, 4-2-3-1 formation, press conferences, and zipper struggles. Andy, what are you going to miss about him the most?
Oh man, that's a good question. I I think.
I know what I'm going to miss.
Yeah, no, go ahead, Mike. Say it, and then let me think.
All right. I mean, I don't think I'll miss anything about him other than his professionalism and his
I
love
was
for
gonna
the
say
club.
the same thing. Yeah.
You know, I wish him good luck, and you know, but I mean, the things I will miss most about him, and this makes me look like a jackass, but it's that once a season explosion that he has, where like he fucking goes telling people that they're disgraces to their federation, and he shoves people and he tells them to fuck off. I mean, that's what I loved, and it's I'm half joking and I'm half serious because his persona and his his class, as people like to assign to him, and I think it's an appropriate word to assign to him, was so on all the time that it was refreshing to see him kind of fall apart at times, and fall apart in a way that showed how much he cares about the club and how intense he is about it. Not fall apart in the way where he starts blaming fans and referees and things that he's done actually that have pissed me off in the past. But yeah, the outbursts I will miss. You might expect to see them from other coaches, but you didn't expect to see them from him. So when they happened, it was even more exciting. But
yeah, I think his class is probably what I'll miss off the pitch. You know, one thing that always frustrated me with the man was we never got apologies when the football was shit. You know, when we lose 5-1 at Munich twice, you never hear I messed up. That's the one thing I wish he would have done. I think I would have been way more a pro Arsene guy if he just said I got it wrong, but it was never the case. But I think
he didn't blame the players either, though. He didn't.
He didn't, and that's the other side of the coin. But you have to respect. He doesn't throw anyone under the bus. I wish he would have owned it more, but I'll miss his professionalism for sure. But hopefully this won't be something we miss. But you know, you hear a lot of players who said, "I'm only here because of Arsene. I'm here because of Arsene," and I hope that long continues. That I'm here because of the next manager, but he brought players to the club because of his reputation and his tenure, and I hope that continues from what he's built. Because the worst thing, like we said before, is the regression. I mean, we can only go up, right?
I want to hear people say, I'm here because it's Arsenal. And this is a club I've always dreamed for playing for. And it could be because of Arsene. It could be because of the next coach. You know, I think it's dangerous when you have people saying, I'm here because of this coach. It's a nice tribute. But I'd be fine never hearing that again, actually. Drew, what are you going to miss?
I mean, obviously it's easy to. I'm not saying you guys took the easy way out, but it's because everyone talks about his professionalism and his class.
We always took the easy way out.
And the way he carried himself and the way he was respectful and how he genuinely took players and fans under his wing, and he did want to really try to not only better himself but better everybody around him. I think that's a quality not just in the manager but in the person in life that is hard to find when it's a genuine thing. So I think you will miss that. But on a more hilarious note, I'm always going to miss. He had those between 5 and 10 moments during the season where he had some of the best banter during his press room conferences. Some of it was absolutely hysterical. The way he would either call out the press, or he would just have those snide comments about other managers that he had the little Arsene grin about it, where everyone would just laugh, but he wouldn't laugh, but he knew he was laughing on the inside. I used to love those moments. So for me, I think that's one of them as well.
Yeah, so you liked when he was out of character.
Yeah, no, I think because it just brings more of, because he's so revered, and for him to have human moments where he's just like you and I and every other fan, I think it is nice to know that he could step down from the persona that he had to not necessarily put on, but he held himself to a higher standard. But it's always nice to know that he could roll with the commoners, for lack of a better term. So.
Nice. All right. So from Alfredo in New Orleans, when do you think, two parts, when do you think the new boss will be announced? And this has been bantered about, but I want to get your point of view, Drew. When do you think it'll be announced? He or she?
I think they'll do it before the World Cup because there's so much work. There is a lot of work to be done, and because it is a short summer and players are going to know what's going on before they go off to the tournament. We do have quite a few players that are probably going to go. I think they'll do it, within the next couple of weeks. To be honest with you,
but not before the last game. You don't think anymore?
No, I don't think so.
Yeah,
I think
at this
they'll
point, there's
wait.
no reason.
Yeah, I think they'll wait at least for the season to end. So.
All right, Andy.
I'm convinced it's Allegri. I don't think we're announcing it because Juve is still in this title battle. I think that when you look at Juventus fans, I think that they are actually looking for a change as well. It sounds absolutely ridiculous, but we've talked about it a lot. They're getting older. I think that their locker room is kind of slipping. They had a lot of leaders, which I think are leaving and walking away from that club. So it just seems like the right time. So for me, I think it's whenever they wrap up the title in the league, then they're going to be able to come out and say that he is leaving. But for me, I truly think it's him. He makes the most sense at this point. If it was an Ancelotti or an Enrique, it would have been done already. I mean, you know,
True.
Arsene gets his send-off anyway. It would have been done. So whoever we're waiting for is somewhere in this limbo of we can't announce it yet. And as Drew said, it's a very short summer. And don't forget, if you have a player on your radar and they go
after the World Cup
and they go to the World Cup and fucking crush it, you fucked. Look at Thomas Rosicky. I mean, we signed him 3 weeks before the World Cup. What, $7 million?
Monster World Cup.
After that World Cup, he would have been 14, 20 million easy.
And that's the one time we did it the right way. Every other time we did it the wrong way.
So for me, you know, everything, a lot of business has got to be done in the next 5 weeks. A lot of business.
And fortunately, new coach or not new coach, in the office or not in the office, the team is in place.
Yes.
The infrastructure is in place.
Because let's not forget, 70% of our team aren't going to the World Cup. So whoever comes in to take over is still going to be running this team in, 8 weeks' time, 7 weeks' time? I mean, the season's going to start for a lot of people training in June. That manager's got to be in with his coaching staff embedding these players. So when your Ozils, Wilshires, Welbecks come back from the World Cup, they're coming into a system that's already in place and everyone's rolling.
I love when you refer to players in the plural. Ozils. All right. The second part of by the way, I agree. I think it's going to be sometime in between next Monday and maybe a week before the World Cup. And if it's not, we're fucked. Second part of the question from Alfredo is you can draft any single Avenger to be our new midfield maestro. Who do you pick? And I'm going to go to Andy on this first because I'm clueless on Avengers because I'm not a nerd.
Oh, don't you know what? I'm not even going to go there.
I know your comeback to that. It's
not even going to go there.
Your comeback to that's not nerdy. It's there's a different insult you would use against me for that, but not nerdy.
Yeah, okay. There's only.
I don't see that as an insult, but hey.
Well, no, I don't mean it as an insult. Well, yeah, no, you love men tackling each other. Listen, there's only one Avenger for me, and Ola. I'm sorry, but it's Thor.
Who does Ola like?
Ola loves the Hulk.
Ola likes Hulk Hogan, actually.
Yeah.
65-year-old balding white guy. Ola's favorite person in the world.
Well, he loves you. Are you 65-year-old and balding?
Okay. All right. I knew we shouldn't have gone here. Drew, where do you stand on this Avengers situation?
I mean,
he's afraid to say that he likes it.
I guess the jokes are going to go full, but I'd go with Black Panther. You're welcome. He'll appreciate that as well.
I'm going to go with Jewish Panther, okay? Because I don't really know any of them, I'm just going to assume that they're a denominational group. All right, thank you, Alfred.
So instead of a shield like Captain America, he has a magical yarmulke.
Oh shit, Mike, that's $1 million idea right there, my man.
We're going to embargo this podcast until we get a few legal issues straightened out, both with the LGBTQ community.
What would his name be? Would it be Captain Jew?
Captain Jew. Captain L'chaim.
Captain L'chaim.
All right.
Captain Kosher.
Captain Kosher.
Nice.
I go and separate the meat and the dairy from everyone's plates.
Marshall, Michigan.
That's my power. All right, we're definitely
We're off
going off the
topic.
rails.
Thanks a lot, Alfredo.
Yeah.
All right.
By the way,
question.
Alfredo, chicken Alfredo, not kosher. For anyone that was wondering.
All right, so this question is from Alex Ramsey, which is Aaron Ramsey's younger brother. I didn't actually read this question yet, so I'm going to read it now, and hopefully it makes sense. What players do you think would be most happy about Arsene leaving, and who do you think will benefit most from his departure? And then he follows up with, obviously, defenders would benefit, but how would someone like Ozil or Mkhitaryan fit in to an Allegri-type system? Or go Drew first.
Oh my God.
Go to Drew only because I don't know shit about
that's pretty difficult. I think one that will benefit from I think it's Kolasinac. I think if you look at him today, and you saw him in his first few performances when he first came, particularly the Community Shield against Chelsea, you saw what he brought to the table. But then halfway through the season, all the hallmarks of his game were snuffed out, but you saw them again today. So I do generally feel like a new manager might look at him and say, for example, he's so good going forward more, pressing more, getting into the final third as well. He's so good at that. That's what made him what he was at Schalke. I think a new manager might appreciate that more than Wenger obviously did. So I think he might be one of the main players to benefit. Certainly maybe Ozil as well, if you get a manager who comes in and still appreciates traditional number 10s and how creative they can be. If you build a team around Ozil, I think he'd flourish, obviously. So maybe those two.
Is that an Allegri trade to be that way?
Juve doesn't really use a number 10. So I think if Allegri comes in, I think Ozil actually might struggle. And it's actually in the same token, if Nagelsmann came in, he also doesn't use 10s. Most big clubs or most managers really don't use traditional number 10s anymore. And as much as I
see him pushed out right, like we've seen when Ramsey's kind of taken the number 10?
To be honest, it wouldn't surprise me if, and this might be a bit of a hot take, but if Mesut Ozil was sold, I wouldn't necessarily be shocked because he's such a specialty player where if you're not using him in that traditional 10 hole, where does he fit in? He's not a winger. He can't play as a deeper central midfielder like Authentic Cazorla. I don't think he's that kind of player. And the managers that we're looking at, none of them use number 10s. Nagelsmann, Allegri, Jardim, Luis Enrique, they don't use those players. So either they're gonna have to break with what their philosophy is to accommodate him, or he's going to have to be forced into a system that he doesn't suit, or he's just going to have to be sold. I think it's
puts an interesting context on his re-signing then. Did they know? Did they know? Did they not know?
I think one of my friends brought up that maybe you feel like the players knew before. Maybe not being told that the players knew that Wenger was leaving and who the new boss was being targeted as, and maybe that's why Ozil re-signed. You don't really know. We honestly have no idea what goes behind the scenes, but I do think Ozil's going to be one of those players where it's going to be really hard to see how he fits in unless we build the tactics around him. He still might struggle. It's going to be very manager dependent for him specifically, I feel.
All right, well, that is a hot take from Drew Thompson, from Black Panther, from African American Panther. The politically correct way of saying it. From Sri the Gooner, who's got how you get like an 8-match goal streak going. He's got probably an 8 to 10 pod question streak going, which means that any day now he will be promoting his new blog or podcast that's going to be started. But we love his questions. How do you see the club's financial direction moving forward? Do we sell big names to buy big names? And the Alexis Mkhitaryan, by the way, another player is not playing in the World Cup. Or do we tap smaller markets and buy unproven names? And he gives the example of Mavropanos. And, for me personally, I think it's going to be a mix of the two. I mean, you've got Mislintat there to identify talent and act on it maybe a little earlier than we traditionally would have. So instead of identifying guys like, Eden Hazard when they're just breaking into the Lille team, and then watching him grow into a player that makes him only signable by a Chelsea, maybe we'll actually pounce on those guys a little bit earlier. And if some of them work, that's great. If some of them don't, you can pull a Chelsea and kind of hopefully resell them, having not paid that much for them in the beginning. So I think you'll see a lot of that. But then you've got Raul, who has the big club Barca mentality, who I think, has the desire to go out and get the deals done when there's somebody that's available, that's a little bit big name and big talent. So, but the Champions League money, I think, is going to be the key to how much of the latter that we get, rather than, the former. And if we have 2 or 3, 4 years of Europa or worse, they're going to be leaning on Mislintat to bring in the unknowns, who can hopefully become known. That's my opinion on it. Andy, what do you think the direction is going to be going forward? Let's say that we are having to be somewhat frugal because of not maximizing our income from Champions League.
Yeah, and I echo what you're saying. You've got 2 people in place who know how to play the transfer market, but look at this year's arrivals. We spent £106 million without the Champions League, and now granted, our departures was 109 million, so we're still net, right? But without Champions League, we're still spending a lot of money, and so I don't think the new manager needs to come in with this 200 million pound war chest we keep hearing about. I don't think that's real, but let's not. I mean, Mike, we're not a bad team.
No, I don't think we need that much.
No, we don't. Now, as Drew said, if a new manager comes in and says, "I don't need 3 number 10s. I gotta get rid of one of them," I think Ozil's probably the first to go, which sucks because, as Drew said, also he is a player who makes every team he plays on better.
Put a price tag on him right now.
A price tag on Ozil at this,
considering that there wasn't a lot of competition to re-sign him.
Again, we don't know that. We don't know who came in for him.
And it may have been because they were waiting for him to be available on a free. So that
exactly. But for me, if you're going to place a price tag on him in this market, seeing all the players who have gone last summer, 60 is a minimum for me.
I thought you were going to say 70. And if he has a good World Cup with Germany again?
Which he will. Ozil is going to walk away more than likely a World Cup winner and probably in the top 3 best Germany players because he plays every minute. He is integral to how they play, and he plays very well for that team because he's got great players around him. So after the World Cup, you could probably get 80 for him. I don't think he will leave. I really don't. I don't think we'll sell him. But I don't think the money's that big of an issue, Mike. And I just want to say this before I hand it over to Drew for him to answer the question. I posted on Twitter a while ago. I still don't put it past the Kroenkes to hire a very young manager. I really don't. They've had such success with 2 massive franchises, with young managers who bring in senior coaching staff. They're yes men. They'll do what they're told. All they do is they're good in front of camera. They're good on the training pitch, and they bring it in. I would not put it past them if we have a very young manager as well. So Arteta's, I don't think, out of the question. I really don't.
Would you put Nagelsmann in that category? Or
I don't know much about him, but no, I think that if they can hire someone who's cheap, low expectation, and a yes man, they'll do it.
That's Tom Canton. You've just described Tom Canton.
Well, he probably would have to have his mom drop him all. I don't know if he's got his driver's license yet. I mean, he's young AF.
It's amazing that he still talks to us.
True.
I think it's going to
wake up.
I think it'll be a mix of both. There was a lot of people who were saying that we need major surgery. I don't believe that, but I do think we need, for example, we need a goalkeeper. Speedy can't be the number 1. Czech is for me already regressing, and it's only going to get worse. I was going to say, but apparently Stoker want 40 million for him, so absolutely not. That's a little bit over the top, but so we need a goalkeeper. We need a center back who is a bit more experienced than what we do have. Generally, Kosher past the injury. He's no longer the Koscielny of old. You just lost Mertesacker as well, so you're lacking a lot of experience. Mustafi is the most experienced center back we have, and I do think there's a better player in there. He can't be the only experienced center back we do have, because if he is susceptible to that many problems, then we don't know how he's going to get on with the new manager. you need someone else. I still think we need a different type of midfielder than what we have. So there's that. There's already 3 players there. Some argue we need genuine pace out wide, so as a winger, so that's 4 players potentially, depending on what the new manager wants to do. So I do think we are going to have to spend, and obviously we're not cash poor. Even without Champions League, we can still spend, as we just discussed. But again, as you did say, we spent 100 million, but also sold 100 million. So I do think, even if we just see one major sale in the summer, say for argument's sake, it is Mesut Ozil, and he does garner, for argument's sake, 70 million pounds. So you add that to the however much we have, then you can then go and go improve on 3 positions with that. But I don't think we can just buy it and not see departures. But that said, Mislintat, he was very honest when he first came to the club. He did say, this is my job. It's what I do. I scour the markets, but he did say that he does get it wrong as much as he gets it right. And I think fans have to understand that every player he might be recommending or scouting or really pushing us to sign, they're not guaranteed to succeed. He had as many failures at Dortmund as he had success.
But you have to be willing to take the chance, and we never have been in the past.
I agree.
Chelsea just, and again, I keep going to Chelsea. They're not necessarily the model of what I want our club to be, but they'll make the purchases and say, well, if it doesn't work out, they've rarely lost money on a name that they brought in and didn't work out there. Of course, a lot of them didn't work out there because of fucking Jose Mourinho and became world beaters everywhere else. But we never would make the moves. We would just look at these guys and be like, no, the 12 million is too much. The value is 8 million.
I'm not disagreeing. And for example, do you think Arsenal would have been bold enough to go to look at Ousmane Dembele after his one season at Rennes and say, we need to take a gamble on this kid? No, Dortmund did, and look how well he performed that one season. It's a shame that he went to Barcelona too early for me, but I don't think Arsenal would have been in a position to make that gamble. That's it. Can do now. Maybe we will be now, and there's so much good young talent in Europe and in South America that I think we'd be crazy to not gamble on at least 1 or 2 of them and say, this player has such potential. But the thing is the question that was always there with the club was, can Arsene Wenger get the best out of young players? Well, he always used to say young players cost you points. The thing is now and I think that's why, because he just came out and said that the new manager has to really want to bring through youth. That's got to be a hallmark at the club going forward, because we've missed out on so many young players because of this fear factor of, in the negative sense, that you bring in the young. Good Lord, you bring in the you bring in the young player. Will they cost you? I think that if the young player is good enough, even if they're young, you still play them and you let them grow organically with time on the pitch, even if they make a massive error. In one match that costs you a win, they're going to be better for it moving forward for the better of the career. So I'm excited
about this 17 years from now. There's going to be there's a great young goalie in Colorado that's just learned how to walk. and he's going to be the future of the club. He'll be the only signing we make that summer. Yeah.
And he's great for football, because when he falls over, he rolls around and starts crying. So
he fits right in.
Yeah, he's going to be great.
Perfect. But I think, again, I think it would be both. But what Andy said, I do agree that there is a chance that we are going to go the younger route. But with that said, there's a difference between going with a younger coach for the Rams and going with a younger manager for Arsenal. Arsenal is a sporting powerhouse on a world level. The same, the Rams are not, and I think that's the difference. I think, and success for Arsenal is so key for Stan Kroenke and his portfolio and everything he wants to do in terms of the sporting world, that there's only so much of a gamble he can take from a managerial standpoint. So I do think while he might go, that's why I think Patrick Vieira is that compromise between the young manager who is more of what he's done with his American franchises and someone who has a bit more experience, but I think Vieira fits the bill for him. So I think that's why they're considering him. And also potentially considering Nagelsmann. So I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility. For me, like I've told you guys before, I just hope that it's not Ancelotti. If it is, I'll just jump off.
Yeah, the second and third hours of our podcast would be me and Drew.
Oh God, I'm going to be so sad if that's the route the club takes.
I had an entire lunch.
It would have been done already.
Yeah, I agree.
I had an entire lunch this week where all I did during lunch, I was at a restaurant. All I did during lunch was team up with Drew to talk about Ancelotti to certain other people who, let's just say, they don't agree with our thinking on this. But I enjoyed that because basically I'm like, he's doing those little up point things to like support what I'm saying, and then he comes in with some actual knowledge, and I'm like, yeah, right. So and I love how Andy's become an expert ITK all of a sudden, saying that he knows Allegri's coming in,
no,
but that we're also hiring very, very young. So either way, he's going to be right.
It makes sense. Like, why wouldn't we have announced already?
Well, so are we hiring Allegri, or are we going on the young route? I mean,
I'm just saying, with the Cronkies, two big franchises they have, Mike, out of the 4 that they own. They've gone. I mean, I don't know if their basketball team has a young coach or not, but I also think that the Arsenal project for them, I think, is more of a Josh project than a Stan at this point.
Let's hope so.
And that could only mean good things because
Josh is better things than when Stan's running it.
But Josh is at least present. You know, I've seen him at Abs games. He goes to the Nuggets games. He's at least present with these franchises where I don't think Stan knows half the time we're playing. I really don't.
No, I agree.
Yeah. So if it is Josh and the whole rumors of him moving to London for 6 months to figure this shit out, if that's true, then that's what's driven this whole change. You know, and it makes sense because we brought these other 2 guys in around that time. And so clearly he's come in to say, let me work with you. And you don't work with Raul and Sven and be the big dick in the room. They are the creme de la creme, right? They're the 2 of the best in the industry. So they're coming in and just saying, hey, man, this is what we need from you. And then that's it, right? So fingers crossed.
If there were shackles, they're gone now,
right.
Or they're gone in a week.
Yeah.
So you got one more question, Andy. You got this one?
I don't. I already X'd out of that screen. Yeah. The question from Mozambique, the entire country. How do you vote, Mike, for our podcast to win this global awards thing that we shouldn't even be in, but we are?
It's ridiculous. It's good for the ego, but lest anybody think that we actually have it in our heads that we're one of the 10 best football podcasts in the world. I mean, look, we love the football blogging awards and we hope to win this, but again, don't think it's going to our heads and that I could list 40 football podcasts that are more professional and more deserving of the award than ours. But hey, we've been nominated. So funny that Mozambique should ask us that question because I was going to mention we have probably by the time you listen to this, it may even be too late. But Monday, the 7th, the voting ends. We have a website called votegooners.us. It'll populate a tweet for you. If you've already done it by Twitter, then you can't anymore. But votegooners.us, share it, vote for us, and we'll see what happens. We'll find out maybe in a week or so whether we won this thing or not.
Hey, are we the number 1 podcast in Wakanda now that Drew's listening?
We know we've got Mozambique locked down, but that's a market that we've been trying to get into. So. All right. Well, this has been more fun than I expected at this hour of the evening, but thank you for joining us, Drew. It's always a pleasure.
Yes,
short notice or long.
No, it's good to be back. Hopefully I'll come on again next season.
Of course you will.
Oh, dude, you're in the.
And when Tom's mom gives him internet, maybe he can come on with you.
when he finds out the Wi-Fi password, you're on the short list.
When he gets his iPad back, maybe he could also join. Grounded.
Oh boy. So please listen on iTunes, watch on YouTube, which is kind of silly for me to say now because you've obviously just completed watching it on YouTube. But we'll try to keep cranking these out, and looking forward to a little bit of a break from this. But in the meantime, Andy, it's been a pleasure.
It has.
And come on, you Gooners. Jeez, he just left. Bye.